The message arrived on Earth not with fanfare, but with silence. It appeared simultaneously on every quantum communication device humanity had created, bypassing all security protocols as if they were children's toys. The Galactic Coalition had been watching, waiting, and judging humanity for centuries. Now they had decided to make contact. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the United Earth Council chamber, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic message floating above the central podium. As Earth's leading xenoanthropologist, she had spent her career preparing for first contact. But nothing could have prepared her for this message's contents. Your species has achieved quantum manipulation capabilities, the message stated in perfect universal standard. As per Coalition Protocol 7249A, you are hereby invited to prove your worthiness for galactic citizenship. Failure to comply will result in immediate technological regression protocols. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from every nation argued about the implications, but Sarah remained silent, analyzing every word choice, every subtle threat embedded in the message. The coalition wasn't inviting Earth to join them. They were demanding submission to their assessment. Dr. Chen, the council president's voice cut through the chaos. You've studied potential alien civilizations for 20 years. What's your analysis? Sarah stepped forward, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. They're afraid, she said, her voice steady. This isn't about worthiness. It's about control. They'd been watching us achieve in decades what took them centuries. They want to ensure we fit their model of civilization before we become too powerful to contain. The hologram shifted, displaying a set of coordinates in the Kuiper Belt. A coalition ship waited there, ready to transport Earth's chosen representative to the Galactic Summit. They had 24 hours to comply. Sarah volunteered before anyone could speak. She had spent her life studying theoretical alien civilizations, and now she would meet them face to face. But as she prepared for departure, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about proving humanity's worth. It was about challenging the very foundations of what the Coalition considered civilization. The Coalition vessel was a marvel of engineering, its crystalline structure seeming to defy physics. The alien crew, beings of pure energy contained within environmental suits, regarded Sarah with what she interpreted as a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Your biological form is inefficient, one stated through the universal translator. How do you expect to contribute to galactic progress while bound by organic limitations? Sarah smiled, remembering her grandmother's words about the strength found in flexibility. Perhaps, she replied, what you see as limitations are actually advantages you haven't considered. The journey to the Coalition's capital world took 3 days in fold space. Sarah spent that time observing her hosts, noting how their seemingly advanced civilization was riddled with rigid protocols and fear of change. They had achieved technological perfection, but had lost something essential along the way: the ability to adapt, to think beyond established patterns. As they approached their destination, a massive artificial construct that served as the Coalition's seat of power, Sarah received her first glimpse of the challenge ahead. Hundreds of alien species were gathered for the summit, each more advanced than humanity in countless ways. But as she watched them interact, she noticed something striking. They all followed the same patterns, spoke the same way, thought along the same lines. The Coalition had created a perfect, stable civilization by eliminating chaos, uncertainty, and the very things that made humanity unique. Now, Earth had to prove its worth to a galactic society that feared everything humanity represented. Sarah straightened her shoulders as the ship docked. She carried with her not just Earth's hopes, but a different vision of progress, one where strength came from diversity, innovation from chaos, and wisdom from embracing change rather than fearing it. The Coalition's test was about to begin, but they didn't realize that humanity had already passed their greatest test, surviving and thriving in a universe that demanded adaptation. Now, it was time to show them why humanity's limitations might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The Coalition's Grand Assembly Hall defied human architectural understanding. Floating platforms of varying heights held thousands of alien representatives, their positions carefully calculated to reflect their species' standing in galactic society. Sarah's platform hovered near the bottom, a clear message about humanity's perceived status. The summit began with what the coalition called the Species Capability Assessment. One by one, civilizations displayed their technological achievements. The quantum minds of Reitel demonstrated instantaneous galaxy-wide computing networks. The crystal collective of Vega showed off world-sized artificial constructs. The energy beings of Antares presented their mastery over space-time itself. Finally, it was Earth's turn. Sarah stood before the assembled species, knowing that anything she presented would seem primitive by comparison. But she had a different plan. Instead of showing you our technology, she began, "I want to show you something else." She activated a hologram, but instead of displaying technological marvels, it showed Earth's history. Images flashed by. Humans surviving ice ages, crossing oceans in wooden ships, flying with artificial wings, and ultimately reaching for the stars. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the assembly. A representative from the Crystal Collective spoke, their crystalline form reflecting light in patterns of derision. "You show us primitive historical records instead of achievements. This proves our concerns about human inadequacy." Sarah smiled. "What I'm showing you is not our weakness, but our strength. In the time it took many of your species to master a single technological path, humanity explored thousands. We failed often, but each failure taught us something new." The energy beings pulsed with what her translator interpreted as laughter. "Your species wastes resources on failed attempts. This is not something to boast about. Yet here we stand." Sarah countered, "Achieving in centuries what took you millennia. You call it waste. We call it learning." The assembly erupted in overlapping translations of protest and dismissal, but Sarah noticed something interesting. Some of the younger species were showing signs of interest. Their representatives leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused intently on her presentation. The coalition's High Minister, a beam of pure thought encased in a quantum field, raised an appendage for silence. "Dr. Chen, you seem to misunderstand the purpose of this assessment. We seek to evaluate your species' ability to contribute to galactic stability. Your presentation suggests humans are inherently destabilizing." Sarah seized this moment. Stability isn't just about maintaining the status quo. True stability comes from being able to adapt to change. In the time we've been here, I've noticed something fascinating about coalition technology. It's perfect, but it's also stagnant. When was the last time any of you created something truly new? The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah continued, her voice carrying clearly through the translators. "Humanity doesn't just solve problems. We imagine new possibilities. We don't just follow paths. We create them. Yes, this makes us unpredictable. Yes, this means we sometimes fail. But it also means we find solutions that would never occur to those who only follow established patterns." A representative from one of the younger species, a collective consciousness of microscopic organisms, shifted their cloud-like form forward. "The human speaks truth. Our own civilization has made more progress in the decades since observing Earth than in the centuries before." The assembly descended into chaos. Some species demanded Sarah's immediate removal. Others began arguing for a reassessment of coalition protocols. The High Minister's quantum field flickered with what might have been concern. Sarah stood calmly in the center of the storm she had created. She knew she had just violated dozens of coalition protocols about proper assembly behavior. She had challenged their most basic assumptions about progress and civilization. But she had also planted a seed of doubt in their certainty. As the session ended in disarray, the High Minister approached her platform. "You have disrupted centuries of established procedure," they stated. "But perhaps that is not entirely negative. Tomorrow, you will face the practical assessment. I suggest you prepare carefully." Sarah watched the minister drift away, knowing that tomorrow would be even more challenging. The coalition was starting to realize that humanity wasn't just another species to be assimilated into their careful order. They were a force for change in a galaxy that had forgotten how to evolve. The practical assessment never began. As the assembly gathered for the day's proceedings, alarm signals pulsed through the station's neural network. The coalition's perfect order was about to face its greatest test. A quantum anomaly had formed in the station's power core, a theoretical impossibility that threatened to tear reality itself apart. The coalition's finest minds, beings who had mastered the fundamentals of space-time, found themselves paralyzed by a scenario that didn't fit their established protocols. Sarah watched as panic spread through the assembly. Species that had mocked humanity's primitive nature now floated, crawled, or phased about in barely contained terror. The station's safety systems, designed to handle every foreseeable emergency, couldn't process the paradox at their core. All species will evacuate immediately, the High Minister announced, their quantum field fluctuating with stress. The station will be sacrificed to contain the anomaly. Wait, Sarah called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. Let me look at the data. The Crystal Collective's representative sparkled with derision. What could a biological mind comprehend that our quantum processors cannot? But the High Minister, perhaps remembering yesterday's discussion about different perspectives, granted access. The station's holographic displays filled Sarah's platform with streams of data. Where the coalition saw only error messages and protocol violations, she saw patterns. Chaotic, unpredictable, but patterns nonetheless. Your systems are too perfect, she explained, fingers dancing through the holographic interface. They're trying to force quantum mechanics to follow classical rules. But sometimes, the universe doesn't work that way. Sometimes, you need to embrace the chaos. The energy beings pulsed with skepticism. Chaos is the enemy of civilization. Our systems are designed to eliminate uncertainty. Sarah smiled, remembering her days as a graduate student, when the most brilliant breakthroughs often came from mistakes. Chaos isn't the enemy. It's the source of innovation. Watch. She began reconfiguring the station's quantum buffers, deliberately introducing small irregularities into their perfect symmetry. The coalition scientists watched in horror as she violated centuries of established principles. But slowly, the anomaly began to respond. Impossible, whispered the Crystal Collective's representative. She's using imperfection to create stability. Sarah worked quickly, her mind racing through possibilities that the coalition's rigid thinking had never considered. In quantum mechanics, the observer affects the observed. Your systems were too perfect, too rigid in their observations. They were forcing the quantum anomaly to exist by trying too hard to measure and control it. The station's alarms began to quiet as the anomaly stabilized. Sarah's primitive solution, embracing uncertainty instead of trying to eliminate it, had succeeded where millions of years of coalition knowledge had failed. The High Minister approached her platform, their quantum field showing patterns that the translator couldn't interpret. You deliberately introduced chaos into our systems, they stated. By all our wisdom, this should have made the situation worse. Sometimes, Sarah replied, the solution isn't about having more control, but about knowing when to let go. Humanity learned this lesson through countless failures and experiments. We know that the universe isn't perfect, and that's what makes it beautiful. The assembly had fallen silent, watching as the last traces of the anomaly dissipated. The station's systems, now operating with a hint of controlled chaos, were functioning better than before. Sarah's primitive modifications had accidentally upgraded their quantum processing capabilities. A representative from one of the elder species, a being of pure mathematics, spoke up. Perhaps we have been too rigid in our definition of advancement. The human solution suggests possibilities we had not considered. The High Minister's quantum field stabilized into a new configuration. Dr. Chen, tomorrow was to be your species' final assessment. But today, you have demonstrated something we had forgotten. That true wisdom sometimes means unlearning what we believe to be true. As the assembly dispersed, still processing what they had witnessed, Sarah noticed a change in how they moved around her platform. The disdain was gone, replaced by something new: curiosity. She had shown them that humanity's primitive nature, our comfort with chaos, our adaptability, our willingness to try the impossible, might be exactly what the galaxy needed. A battle-hardened human soldier with glowing blue cybernetic eyes and facial scars stands in the foreground, his expression cold and determined. His high-tech armored suit is battle-worn, bearing the insignia of humanity's last stand. Behind him, a group of heavily armed futuristic soldiers prepares for war, their faces hidden behind tactical helmets. The command center is dimly lit, illuminated by the glow of holographic war maps and tactical displays. A large screen behind them shows the words "Final Stand." Humanity awaits in bold red letters, with a strategic map of Earth under siege. The atmosphere is tense, filled with the weight of an impending battle, as humanity prepares to send its final warning to the alien invaders. The assembly reconvened with a different energy. The previous day's crisis had cracked the coalition's veneer of superiority, revealing uncertainties that had been hidden beneath centuries of protocol. But it also exposed something deeper: ancient conflicts that their perfect order had suppressed rather than resolved. Sarah noticed the subtle signs of tension. The energy beings deliberately dimming their glow when near the Crystal Collective, the mathematical entities refusing to share platforms with the quantum minds. These species had coexisted for millennia, but they had never truly understood each other. The High Minister called the session to order. "Before we continue with Earth's assessment, we must address an urgent matter. The drift between has expanded." A hologram appeared in the assembly center, showing a vast region of dead space where thousands of systems had once thrived. The drift between was the coalition's greatest shame, a graveyard of worlds destroyed by ancient wars, now expanding as the quantum damage spread. "Our containment protocols are failing," the High Minister continued. "The void grows. If unchecked, it will reach populated systems within a standard solar cycle." Sarah studied the data streams. The drift between wasn't just empty space. It was a wound in reality itself, created by species who had once wielded science like weapons. The coalition's solution had been to quarantine it, to pretend it didn't exist. But wounds, Sarah knew, didn't heal when ignored. "Perhaps," she said, standing at her platform, "this is a problem that needs a human perspective." The assembly stirred. The Crystal Collective's representative chimed in sharp tones. "The drift between exists because species like yours tried to solve problems through chaos and conflict. This is why we need order, control, perfection." "No," Sarah countered. "It exists because different species couldn't understand each other. They fought because they couldn't imagine other ways of thinking." Sound familiar? Her words hit home. The assembly fell silent as species that had spent millennia avoiding their past were forced to confront it. "Show me the quantum readings from the barrier zones," Sarah requested. As the data appeared, she began to see patterns, not in the numbers themselves, but in how different species interpreted them. The energy beings saw waves, the Crystal Collective saw lattices, the quantum minds saw probability clouds. Each perspective was correct, yet incomplete. "You're all seeing different aspects of the same reality," she explained. "Just like yesterday's crisis, the solution isn't about finding the one right answer. It's about learning to see through each other's eyes." Sarah began to reconfigure the holographic display. The energy beings understand quantum waves better than anyone. The Crystal Collective knows how to structure space itself. The quantum minds grasp probabilities that others can't imagine. But you've never truly combined your knowledge because you believe your way is the only right way. She brought up the containment field specifications. What if, instead of trying to force the drift between into submission, we try to understand it? Not as a problem to be controlled, but as a conversation between different forms of reality. Working with representatives from each species, Sarah began to weave their perspectives together. The energy beings' wave patterns flowed through Crystal Collective matrices, guided by quantum mind probability maps. Other species joined in, each adding their unique understanding to the whole. It's not about containing the void, Sarah explained as the new model took shape. It's about healing it. The drift between is expanding because it's still trying to resolve conflicts that ended millennia ago. Your containment fields were like bandages on a wound that needed to breathe. The High Minister's quantum field pulsed with understanding. You are suggesting we learn from our past rather than hiding it, to heal rather than contain. Exactly, Sarah smiled. And not just the drift between. Look at how you're all working together now. When was the last time your species collaborated like this? The assembly buzzed with energy as the new approach took form. The human perspective, seeing connection where others saw division, finding strength in diversity rather than uniformity, was transforming more than just the drift between. As the day drew to a close, the first test results came in. The new healing fields, born from the combined wisdom of a dozen species, were showing signs of success. The void wasn't just being contained, it was starting to shrink. But Sarah knew the real victory wasn't in the technical solution. It was in the way the assembly had changed. Species that had avoided each other for centuries were now engaged in eager discussion. The rigid hierarchy of platforms seemed less important as representatives moved freely, sharing ideas and perspectives. The High Minister approached Sarah's platform once again. Tomorrow, they said, the Assembly will make its final decision about Earth's place in the coalition. But perhaps it is we who must prove worthy of humanity's participation. Sarah watched the continued collaboration between species with satisfaction. She had shown them that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in technology or power, but in our ability to build bridges between different ways of thinking, different ways of being, different ways of seeing the universe. The coalition had achieved perfect order, but humanity could offer something more valuable: the ability to find harmony in diversity. The final day of the summit dawned with an atmosphere of anticipation. The assembly hall had been reconfigured, the hierarchical platforms now arranged in a circular pattern, all at the same height. It was a small change that spoke volumes about the transformation taking place within the coalition. The High Minister's quantum field shimmered with unusual patterns as they addressed the assembly. We gather today to decide not just humanity's fate, but our own. The past days have shown us truths we have forgotten in our pursuit of perfection. The Crystal Collective's representative chimed in, their crystalline form refracting light in thoughtful patterns. For millennia, we believed advancement meant moving away from biological limitations. We thought transcending physical form would lead to higher understanding. Yet a biological human showed us solutions we couldn't see. Sarah stood at her platform, watching as species after species added their perspectives. The energy beings spoke of how humanity's chaos had brought new vitality to their ordered existence. The quantum minds admitted that human unpredictability had forced them to expand their probability models. Even the mathematical entities acknowledged that human intuition had found patterns their equations had missed. But not all were convinced. A coalition of elder species, led by beings of pure thought, raised their objections. This change is too rapid, too destabilizing, their spokesperson argued. Yes, humanity has shown useful traits, but their inclusion threatens the stability we have maintained for eons. Their chaos could spread, undermining everything we've built. Sarah stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. Change isn't a threat, it's a necessity. The universe itself is constantly evolving. By trying to create perfect stability, you've been fighting against the very nature of existence. She gestured to the holographic displays, showing the healing drift between. Look at what we've achieved in just a few days by combining our different perspectives. Imagine what we could accomplish in years, in centuries, working together not despite our differences, but because of them. The High Minister raised an appendage for attention. We have existed for millions of years, building a civilization based on order and predictability. Humanity has existed for a mere moment in cosmic time. Yet in that moment, they have shown us new ways of seeing, new ways of thinking, new ways of being. The assembly erupted in debate. Some argued for maintaining tradition, others for embracing change. The station's translators worked overtime trying to keep up with the overlapping arguments in thousands of languages. Finally, an ancient species, one that had been silent throughout the summit, moved their platform forward. They were the observers, beings who had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. Their very presence brought immediate silence to the assembly. "We have watched," they began, their thoughts translated into waves of pure concept, as the coalition grew strong through order. "But we have also watched as that strength became stagnation. The universe does not favor the unchanging. It favors those who can adapt, who can grow, who can see beauty in imperfection." The observer turned their unfathomable sensory organs toward Sarah. "Humanity reminds us of what we once were, before we feared chaos, before we sought to control everything. They remind us that true wisdom lies not in avoiding change, but in learning to dance with it." The High Minister's quantum field stabilized into a new configuration. "Then let us put it to a vote, not just on humanity's admission to the coalition, but on the very nature of our future. Will we remain as we are, perfect and unchanging? Or will we learn to grow again?" The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Species after species chose change, chose growth, chose the uncertainty of evolution over the safety of stagnation. Earth was not just admitted to the coalition. They were asked to help guide the coalition into a new era. As the assembly concluded, Sarah received a final message from the High Minister. "We invited you here to prove your worth to us. Instead, you helped us rediscover our own worth. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy may not be your technology or your solutions, but your reminder that civilization thrives not through perfection, but through the constant courage to imagine something better." Sarah looked out at the assembly hall, where species that had once held themselves apart now mingled freely, sharing ideas and perspectives. The coalition was changing, becoming something new, something that combined the best of order and chaos, stability and growth, certainty and wonder. As she prepared to return to Earth, Sarah realized that this wasn't just a victory for humanity. It was a victory for the very idea that different ways of thinking, different ways of being, different ways of seeing the universe could come together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The galaxy was entering a new age, one where perfection would no longer be the goal. Instead, they would seek something far more valuable, the perfect imperfection of growth, of change, of life itself. And humanity, with all its beautiful chaos, would help light the way.